Greetings. I'm Jeffrey Ruoff, a professor in the Department of Film and Media at Dartmouth College. Welcome to this world premiere of video mashups made this fall by Dartmouth students. Video mashups is a hands-on course, experiential, in which students learn by making videos. And the 12 students this fall included first years, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Some experienced video makers, others just starting out. Throughout the term, students collaborated on a variety of different videos. This course involves no filming. Instead, students borrow, appropriate, and quote images and sounds from pre-existing movies, songs, news, advertisements, cartoons, TV shows, and so on, to edit together new works in genres that include music videos, movie trailer recuts, supercuts, and political mashups. Many of these recontextualized videos examine our media image of ourselves. The students share with us the power of editing and imagination. Despite working under the unprecedented conditions of the pandemic in numerous different time zones, and during a period of national crises of racism, sexism, and corruption, the students have produced remarkable videos. And as you'll see, a number of them powerfully address these very crises, while others take us in different directions. The students have worked hard over the last 3 weeks to make these final videos. I'm very proud of them. The screening lasts about 40 minutes. At 8 p.m. Standard Eastern Time, Eastern Standard Time, I'll have a Q&A with the students at the Zoom webinar link listed. I hope you'll attend the Q&A as well, where you'll have the opportunity to meet the students and submit written comments and questions. The students and I would like to thank two people who provided indispensable help over the course of the fall term, namely our teaching assistant, Matt Gannon, and the film video technician, Peter Chardelli. Their assistance was integral to the success of the course. A big shout out to Matt and Peter. Enjoy this screening of video mashups by Dartmouth students.
You need to understand that the men made it to the round of 16 in the World Cup.
We've won 3 World Cups.
They play with so much passion.
We have 4 Olympic gold medals.
Stop fighting for the bigger picture. We might not get it today, but we want the future to be better for maybe my daughter or her daughter, and so that's what we really are fighting for.
Players on the U.S. women's national soccer team say they're being discriminated against because they make less than members of the men's team.
Men's soccer has been getting 10 times the eyeballs.
Well, we actually broke the record for the most watched soccer game in the history of America between men or women.
I just came to say hello.
This team taught all America's children that playing like a girl means you're a badass.
Are in and the women are out. For the first time in 8 years, not a single woman made the Forbes 100 list of the world's highest paid athletes.
We win. We're successful. Should get what we deserve.
Change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality.
Michael Brown Jr.,
John Crawford,
Freddie
Gray, Walter Scott,
12-year-old Tamir
Jonathan
Rice,
Ferrell,
Breonna Taylor, George Floyd.
And that is just a sampling of how this is not a local issue. It is a national disaster. It is a national problem. It's reminiscent of everything that Black and brown people have experienced with law enforcement since the beginning of their establishment. It is a national problem.
Based on our research, we found that African Americans were disproportionately killed by officers.
You have to meet such a high hurdle in order to hold them responsible criminally that most often you're going to see a police officer walk out of that courtroom and not suffer a guilty verdict.
The Civil Rights Act that Congress passed in 1871 created the legal violation, really, the right to sue. Qualified immunity is something that courts invented, and it says, think again. We are going to make him immune. Unless you happen to be able to point to a case that involved the same conduct and the same context, where a court told some other officer that it was wrong.
Law enforcement officers break the law. They should be held accountable.
People here are angry and they're upset. Not just the killing of George Floyd, but for 400 years of oppression. Let's be clear, this wasn't an act last week. This is a compilation of so much poverty, so much pain, so much injustice, and people have reached their tipping point.
From coast to coast, thousands gathering to peacefully protest racial injustice and police brutality.
It was very moving to see hundreds and thousands of people from all over America and around the world take to the streets to speak up, to speak out, to get in what I call good trouble.
We want an end to the police state. What that has to look like then is transparent and responsible and accountable policing.
Divesting or defunding from the police, but what does it look like to reinvest into our communities? What are the first few things we can decriminalize? I would say homelessness. I would say drug and alcohol addiction. And I would say mental health crisis.
In Minneapolis, the city council voted to completely replace the existing police department
and reimagine public safety. In Boston, the mayor declared racism a public health crisis and made a pledge to transfer funds from the police department's overtime budget towards community programs.
No justice, no peace. 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 No justice, no peace.
These are revolutionary times. This is times where we are burning down old societal norms and planting seeds to sprout a new, beautiful, equitable world.
I'm Ariel Sky Williams. I'm 8 years old. I'm unarmed and I have nothing that will hurt you.
It's just kind of a thing we practice at our house.
The moments that made the night and may shape the coming campaign.
So please be specific. How would you lead the country during this next stage of the coronavirus crisis?
We've learned and studied and understand the disease, but Joe did say, don't wear masks. He did say, as you know, this is not going to be a problem.
I said, don't worry, it's going to go away. Be gone by Easter. Don't worry. The warm weather. Don't worry. Maybe inject bleach.
This is a worldwide problem, but I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do with the socialized medicine. And frankly, he ran the H1N1 swine flu, and it was a total disaster, far less lethal.
It was much worse than the Chinese flu.
But it was a total disaster. Had that had this kind of socialized medicine, it would have been a much better health care, much better. But he didn't move quicker. He was months behind me. Joe, what's that all about? It's terrible.
Look, this isn't about, there's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. And I think health care is not a right. It's a privilege, period. Period. And the socialist proposal will, in fact, cost the American people $800 billion.
We have monumental choices to make, and some folks are really going to lose a lot.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward.
Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means unemployment numbers goes up. Let me just tell you, Joe, I've agreed with Bernie Sanders on a plan to raise everybody's taxes.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 0%. It shouldn't be 21%. Millionaires and billionaires like me in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. I'm going to eliminate taxes. Not only not costing people jobs, creating millions of good-paying jobs.
And I have to note this. I think Biden was very strong on several points that you're not going to hear elsewhere.
Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
There's no systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. Second point I'd make to you is that there are very fine people on both sides. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. And by the way, peaceful protests in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate.
President Trump, sir.
He's a racist, and our country is a racist place. We have to do better.
For each of you, how would you both combat climate change and support job growth at the same time? Starting with you, President Trump, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So we have the Trillion Trees program. We have so many different programs. I do love the environment, but what I want is the cleanest, crystal clear water, the cleanest air. We have done an incredible job environmentally. We have the cleanest air, the cleanest water, and the best carbon emission standards that we've seen in many, many years.
The fact is that climate change, climate warming, the global warming is not real. Well, I tell you what, my plan will, in fact, create hundreds of millions of barrels of oil.
Get rid of your oil industry. You want, and what about fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer we need other industries to transition to get to ultimately much more fracking on federal land, I said.
Lots of money and lots of power and lots of freedom. It's all up for grabs.
Mesut Ozil here, one of the best players in the world, is coming to Arsenal. The 24-year-old, in the prime of his career, has signed a 5-year deal to join Arsenal. The fee, £42.5 million. It's a world-class player, proven at both club and international level.
I said I'm geek and I'm fired up. All I want tonight is just get higher.
Ozil! Brilliant! Absolutely precise! Mesut Ozil!
It's a secret society. All we ask is try. All we got is love. Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty.
Ozil! It's another beautifully worked goal.
Kenny now. My resume is real enough for 2 millenniums. A better way to make a way, start defending them. I meditate and moderate all of my wins again. I'm hanging on the fence again. I'm always on your mind.
2-0. As easy as you like.
When I might shine, might grind. You rolling with it at the right time, right now. Only for the dollar sign.
Bad girl, living now. Swerve, 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 leaving now. On your pulse, I can see the end. Gas on the bitch like it's premium. Hard ass on the bitch, all in the fast lane. Been a bad bitch with before any cash came. I'm established, 100 carats on my name, run the atlas. I'm a natural, I'm a ray.
I'm a savage, I'm an asshole, I'm a king. Shimmy out, shimmy out, shimmy out, right. You can tell your nigga he can meet me outside. You can babysit him when I leave him outside. Ain't no other love like the one I know. I done been down so long, lost hope. I done came down so hard, I slow. I done sleep forever, all a real nigga won't.
That's gonna get you killed.
Germany have crashed out of the World Cup in one of the biggest shocks of the tournament's history.
Trust me.
All I want is
Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty.
The parts in his statement that are rightly addressed are unfortunately overshadowed by a significantly higher amount of nonsense. I think he knows very well that racism within the national team and the German association does not exist.
Tell me who you're loyal to. Is it money, is it fame, is it weed, is it drink? Is it coming down with the loud pipes in the rain? Big chillin' only for the power in your name. Tell me who you're loyal to. Is it love for the streets when the lights get dark? Is it unconditional when the Rari don't start? Tell me when your loyalty is coming from the heart.
Tell me who you're loyal to. Do it start with your woman or your man? Do it end with your family and friends? Or your loyalty is self-in-defense? I said, tell me who you're loyal to. Is it anybody that you would lie for? Anybody you would slide for? Anybody you would die for?
That's what
I said I'm geek and I'm fired up. All I want tonight is just get higher.
All I want is loyalty, loyalty,
Decided
loyalty.
he's in the squad.
Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. Tenfold, no switching sides. Feel something wrong. You acting shifty, you don't vibe with me no more. I need loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. Loyalty, loyalty.
It's so hard to be humble. It's so hard to be. Lord knows I'm trying.
Let's shag ass.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Own life.
With respect to the Native Americans, that I go right back to where I was 2 years ago when I was campaigning. Very respectfully, what the hell do you have to lose? Okay? What the hell do you have to lose? Have to lose.
I was told by those old ones
that every song has a special time and a place where it's sang,
"This is our song."
and this is our time. You used to say the only good Indians were dead Indians.
I must be no good.
No good at being Indian.
No good.
Be no good at being Indian.
'Cause I feel alive and kicking.
We are the bastard reject children
Of manifest destiny.
The offspring of fornicating youngsters.
Raised by our grandparents who told us
Not to confuse being warriors with gangsters.
Here I stand before you, this crowd of nations. This life of sanctions
An awkward patience like 500 BIA buildings versus a father's unfiltered hate.
right next to the IHS building with a 2.5-week wait.
With the cinder block battlefield where few are left standing.
And the people it's failing? Its marginalized estate.
I am armed to the teeth with words from the ivory tower. And those good Indians told me.
Its borrowed power.
If I talk loud enough, if I talk clear enough, that I would be heard.
So understand me in English.
You have been robbed of your tongues.
The taproot of thought in the middle of resisting.
In the middle of resisting, the language got caught, and she only shows her face during ceremony.
Like she's ashamed of her scars.
Like what she has to say is never really heard at all.
And the violence she knows is enough to never sing again. But I killed the cameraman.
And I stripped him of his lens.
I photographed the body and asked him to forgive.
Forgive me as I cut out your tongue.
Forgive me as I put you in this powdered wig.
Forgive me as I put your body in a museum.
Forgive me of all my sins.
For not being a good Indian.
Holly came from Miami, FLA. Hitchhiked her way across USA. Plucked her eyebrows on the way. Shaved her legs and then he was a she. She says, hey babe, take a walk on the wild side. Said, hey honey, take a walk on the wild side. Candy came from out on the island. In the back room she was everybody's darling. But she never lost her head. Even when she was given head, she says, hey babe, take a walk on the wild side. Said, hey babe, take a walk on the wild side. And the colored girls go do 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 do. Little Joe never once gave it away. Everybody had to pay and pay. A hustle here and a hustle there. New York City is the place where they said, hey babe, take a walk on the wild side. I said, hey Joe, take a walk on the wild side. Sugar Plum Fairy came and hit the streets, looking for soul food and a place to eat. Went to the Apollo, you should have seen him go, go, go. They said, hey, sugar, take a walk on the wild side. I said, hey, babe, take a walk on the wild side. All right. Ha. Jackie is just speeding away. Thought she was James Dean for a day. Then I guess she had to crash. Valium would have helped that patch. I said, hey, babe, take a walk on the wild side. I said, hey, honey, take a walk on the wild side. And the colored girls say, do 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 do.
The Board of Trustees voted to matriculate women degree candidates for the AB degree effective in the fall of 1972. The major consideration to reach this decision was the conviction of the board that women will play an increasingly important role in leadership positions in the future of our country, since Dartmouth has traditionally prided itself on training leaders for our nation. In the future, Dartmouth will play this role both for men and for women.
Freshman girl at Dartmouth College said she was sexually assaulted after detailed instructions on how to carry out rape appeared on a student message board.
Only 2 rapists expelled in 20 years! Only 2 rapists expelled in 20 years! Dartmouth has a problem! Dartmouth has a problem!
It wasn't until I began to learn about other stories of women getting hurt in the department that I realized that this wasn't an isolated case, that this was something that was happening to other women.
At Dartmouth, we are raped, and our topics said that sexual violence is a facet of our campus like the Bell Tower or the Green.
My experience has been is that college has taken the position there's really nothing they can do, that this is a freedom of speech issue. Dartmouth doesn't like to talk about the problems they have.
Buried in Dartmouth's 2019 Annual Security and Fire Report, a figure that jumps off the page. In 2018, a nearly 42% increase in reported rapes.
Tonight, Dartmouth denies wrongdoing and tells ABC News, as a result of the misconduct we found earlier this year, we took unprecedented steps.
We are deeply committed to ensuring the safety and well-being of students. In the meantime, police are asking students to lock their dorm room doors.
Behavior by a few rogue actors will destroy the unique campus culture that we know and cherish.
The year is 2025, and the Americans refuse to believe in the science, so now they are in space. What happened to the Americans, and who is left in America? How did the Americans let a virus take over their country, and why did they refuse help from others?
Hi, perhaps you recognize me. It's your favorite president, and I'm standing in front of the Oval Office at the White House. It's going away. No, it'll go away. Things go away. It's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear. They are dying. That's true. And it is what it is.
The reality is the pandemic is far from over, experts say. 28 states report increases in new cases from 1 week ago, and cases are rising at rates not seen in 2 months.
While people continued to debate wearing masks and taking a vaccine, the country became uninhabitable. One brave machine, who was abandoned by the Americans, made the journey to space to see this new America. Could he return life to normal? Or is this the new normal?
Cruising speed. You are now free to move about the cabin.
So let's hover over to the driving range and hit a few virtual balls into space.
Nah, we did that yesterday. I don't want to do that.
Well, then what do you want to do?
I don't know. Something.
Time for lunch. In a cup. It's the new year. Oh, stunning. Great. I know, honey.
But this America didn't look much different than the last. They continued to stare at their screens and make poor life decisions. Can one small robot convince the Americans to believe in the science? The fate of America, as we know it, relies on Wall-E.
It's going to be really classy.
It's going to be really fantastic. It's going to be you.
And we begin with that new case, the first human-to-human case of the coronavirus here in the U.S.
Right now in the United States, the situation still is a low risk for the American public, but then again, that could change.
Use this gospel. The World Health Organization tonight has now declared the outbreak a global health emergency after a tenfold jump in cases in just a week.
You may ask about the coronavirus, which is very well under control in our country.
The first death from coronavirus here in the United States. A man in his 50s dying from COVID-19 infection in Washington state.
Thousands of Americans may have been exposed to the coronavirus, but have not been tested.
The coronavirus now has 1 in 4 Americans living in lockdown.
The U.S. is now leading the world in the number of confirmed coronavirus cases, according to Johns Hopkins University.
America has passed the grim milestone of 20,500 deaths to overtake Italy as the world's worst hit nation.
This is a serious thing, and right now, the federal government is failing.
As we have heard, today's jobs report fills in a picture of devastating unemployment nationwide, not seen since the Great Depression.
Next, the ongoing coronavirus threat, the death toll in the U.S. now officially topping 110,000 and closing in on 2 million confirmed cases.
There are alarming new statistics showing the pandemic is taking an especially heavy toll on minority communities.
African Americans account for 41% of COVID deaths in Michigan, though only 14% of residents. In Chicago, Black residents represent 72% of deaths, but just 30% of the population.
As anxiety over the coronavirus runs high, it's accompanied by another distressing trend, a rise in racism.
What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
What would you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by and stand by.
Outrage at the death of George Floyd, an African-American man, while in police custody in Minneapolis nearly a week ago. In city after American city tonight, thousands of people have once again taken to the streets to express their anger, frustration, and solidarity with others among them. It is a precarious moment for this country, still in the grip of a pandemic that has claimed more than 100,000 lives, shuttered businesses, and left 40 million Americans out of work.
Loved ones of Breonna Taylor grieving and outraged.
No one has been arrested or charged in the death of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery.
We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate. Only the unloved hate. The unloved and the unnatural. In this world there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way.